scrap metal dealer Jack Smith and his partner young Leo Trotsky are charged with stealing copper from another scrap metal dealer, Ernest Richards, and with assaulting his wife Irene. Mr. Richards is now giving evidence.
Mr. Richards, you say you found your wife lying unconscious, covered in blood, in the back of an old Riley car in your scrapyard. Now, when this happened, what did you do?
I went straight to the old cowshed.
Yes, and what did you find there?
I found all my copper had gone.
Excuse me, Mr. Deedy. The evidence is that when the accused Smith heard there was an allegation that he had attacked Mrs. Richards, he said, "If she's hurt, I'm sorry, but it was self-defense." Now, Mr. Richards, is your wife a large woman? I mean, can you describe her to us?
Oh, yes, Your Honour. She's, well, Mrs. Richards is normal looking.
Yes, I mean, is she a large woman? Is she big and strong?
No, I wouldn't say she was big and strong. She's, middling, I'd say.
And that is the best that you can do. Oh, very well, carry on, Mr. Deedy.
Now, the truth is it not, Mr. Richards, that you did sell that copper to Mr. Smith?
You calling me a liar?
Yes, Mr. Richards, I am.
Are you suggesting that Smith actually paid money to this witness?
No, my lord, I'm suggesting that there was a binding agreement for the sale of that copper, and that it was agreed that Smith should collect it that night, and it was also agreed that he should pay Richards within the week.
You ever heard of a scrap metal dealer want to give credit? Well, it's barking mad.
So you deny all that, do you?
You bet I do.
See? No further questions, my lord.
Now, Mr. Richards, you've told us that Mr. Dobie took no part in the conversation in his hut. But that's not right, is it? He had a great deal to say for himself, did he not?
If you really want to know, he was laying on the floor and he never said a word.
You see, I was going to suggest that he entered into a conversation about the price of the copper, but I expect you deny that.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, it's right, isn't it, that in January 1970 you were charged in this very court with assault occasioning grievous bodily harm?
My lord, before the witness answers, I feel it is my duty to point out the perils in such a question to Mr. Parsons.
Yes, I'm much obliged, Mr. Golding. I'm sure, Mr. Parsons, you have the perils of such a question well in mind.
I have, my lord, and I'm willing to take the consequences.
Very well, Mr. Richards, you will answer the question.
Yeah. Yes, I did. What's that got to do with it?
And you pleaded not guilty, went into that witness box, and gave evidence on oath.
Yeah, and they clobbered me.
Indeed, with an 18-month prison sentence. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, me and my boys. We all got 18 months.
Yes, you and your two sons. And you lied in that court, did you not, as you're lying here today?
Why should I lie? I ain't never had no quarrel with them. Not till they nicked me flaming copper. We have not ever had no dispute about nothing. And I challenge you to deny that.
Well, I don't deny that, Mr. Richards. Now, your two sons are in court today, you say?
Yeah, they come along.
Yes, perhaps you could point them out to us.
Yeah, there they are over there.
Yes. Now, the quarrel which resulted in you and your sons being convicted for assault, that was about scrap, wasn't it?
Yeah, the bloke nicked it off us.
Yes, so you and your two sons worked him over.
No, we was attacked.
Oh, this one man attacked all three of you. But the jury believed it was the other way round, didn't they? In fact, isn't that what you always do, Mr. Richards, when someone steals something from you? You set your sons on them.
It's the only bit of trouble we ever had.
You deny that you habitually use violence against persons who cross you.
Emphatically.
Yes. Now tell me, do you always call your wife Mrs. Richards?
Yeah, it's her name.
But her name's Irene, isn't it? Don't you ever call her Irene?
No. She don't like it. She says it sounds like an hairdresser's assistant. It's not a respectful name, you see.
Respectful? But if you call her Mrs. Richards, that's respectful.
Yeah.
I see. Now, you hadn't told Mrs. Richards that, in fact, you had sold the copper to Smith, had you?
Well, why should I do that? That would have been making up a tale. Why should I do that?
So naturally she thought it was being stolen, when in fact you had told Smith he could collect the copper that night.
No, I never said nothing like that.
And of course you didn't want to tell Mrs. Richards that you really had sold it, because you had been keeping it from her, dealing behind her back.
You're saying that Mrs. Richards wears the trousers, that I'm frightened of her. You must be joking. Me and my boys frightened of her.
Well, we shall see, Mr. Richards. Thank you.
Mr. Richards, do you and your wife get on well together?
All I can say is that us and the boys is a very happy family.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. I have no further re-examination, my lord.
Very well. You may leave the box, Mr. Richards.
I call Detective Sergeant Barnett.
Detective Sergeant Barnett, please.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Albert James Barnett, Detective Sergeant, Fulchester CID.
Sergeant, did you go to Ernest Richards' scrapyard at the apple trees Absoley on the night of the 11th and 12th of May of this year?
I did, sir.
And did you find something there in what is known as the old cowshed?
Yes, sir. I found a wooden mallet.
Is that the mallet?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 1, my lord. And did you examine the mallet, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. I found traces of blood and human hair. And after dusting it, I found fingerprints.
And were you able, as a result of subsequent tests, to say where the traces were from and whose the fingerprints were?
Yes, sir. The blood was the same group as Mrs. Richards. The hair was one of Mrs. Richards' hairs. The only fingerprints were the boys, Leo Trotsky's.
See, and I believe you visited Mrs. Richards in hospital on the afternoon of the 12th of May.
Yes, sir, I did.
Were you able to see what injuries she'd sustained?
Yes, sir. Fortunately, they weren't as serious as they might have been. She had a laceration of the skull, which has been stitched up, 18 or 20 stitches, I think it was, and a slight concussion.
And did you also interview the boy, Leo Trotsky, at 6 p.m. on the 12th of May?
I did, sir. I saw him at Fulchester Police Station. I told him I wanted to ask him some questions, but that he needn't answer them if he didn't wish to. But that if he did answer, his answers would be taken down and given in evidence at his trial.
Taken down, twisted and read out, Leo.
Did you say something, Smith?
Not out loud, your worship. Here, I was only whispering to young Leo here.
That is not what I call a whisper, Smith. Now, I have been very patient with you, but my patience is running out. Do you understand?
I'm sorry, your worship. I didn't mean to cause no trouble.
Very well. Go on, Mr. Golding.
And did the boy say anything?
Yes, sir. I asked him, who hit Mrs. Richards with the mallet last night? And he said, me. I then asked if there'd been a fight beforehand, and he said, no, we heard her coming. Jack said, get behind the door, and when she came in, I whopped her. I know it was wrong. I then terminated the interview.
Now, I think it's right, isn't it, that after the interview you conveyed the boy to Agnew School, where he remained until the 5th of June, when he absconded.
Correct, sir.
And the boy had been made subject to a temporary order putting him into the care of the local authority.
Yes, sir.
And on the 20th of June, were you at Fulchester?
Yes, sir. I was out shopping with my wife when I caught sight of the boy. I knew he'd gone missing. The little blighter led us a real song and dance. But in the end we found him, hiding in the dustbins behind Woolworths.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Sergeant, the evidence that you have given of a conversation with Leo Trotsky is a complete fabrication, is it not?
No, sir.
Because when you saw the boy, he maintained a complete silence to all your questions, didn't he?
No, sir. He said that.
Look, are you aware that this boy refused to speak to the staff at his school, and that he would only give his name to the probation officer?
Yes, sir, I heard.
So what was it about you, Sergeant, that produced such startlingly different results?
I've no idea, sir. I've got children of my own. Perhaps that was it.
Oh. Sergeant, it is usual, is it not, that when a policeman interviews a minor, for an adult member of the public to be present?
I suppose that happens more often than not, sir, yes.
And you strayed from this usual procedure, did you not, so that you could concoct this evidence?
No, sir, there was just nobody about at the time. At 6 o'clock, all the civilian staff had gone home.
At the very least, you could have asked another member of the police force to have been present.
I suppose I could have, yes.
Then why didn't you?
Well, I didn't think it was that important. I wasn't going to do anything improper.
Except to fabricate a piece of evidence against a child, Inspector. No further questions, my lord.
No cross-examination, my lord.
Sergeant, is there any truth whatsoever in the suggestion that you have fabricated evidence against this boy?
None whatsoever, sir.
Thank you, Sergeant. Do you have any questions, my lord?
No, thank you, Mr. Golding. Thank you, Sergeant. You may go.
I call Irene Richards.
What is your religion?
Presbyterian.
Take the book in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
Can't see without my glasses.
Very well. Repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God.
Swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Mrs. Richards, I'm over here.
Oh, sorry.
Mrs. Richards, is it right that your full name is Irene Richards and that you live with your husband, Ernest Richards, at the Apple Trees, Apsley?
Yes.
Have you quite recovered from your injuries, Mrs. Richards?
Yes, thank you, mister.
Mrs. Richards, were you at home on the night of the 11th and 12th of May of this year?
First part I was, mister. Second half I was in the hospital having my head stitched. Would you like to have a look at
No,
it?
thank you, Mrs. Richards. Now, will you tell us slowly and in your own words about the first part of that evening?
You want to know what happened when we went to bed, don't you? I mean, it's no use me telling you what we had for our supper now, is it?
Now, Mrs. Richards, it's not so much what happened when you went to bed that interests us, but what happened when you got up.
I heard something going on in the yard.
And what time was this?
Don't know, but it was the middle of the night.
Now, did you know that your husband had got this load of copper?
Of course I did.
And as far as you knew, he hadn't sold it to anyone?
Sold it? He hadn't sold it. I'd have known if he had.
But you mean he always told you what was going on?
Of course he did.
Now, when you heard something going on outside, did you wake up your husband?
Ern? Him? Waking him up at that time would be trying to launch the Queen Mary all on your own Todd.
So, when you woke up, what did you do?
Well, we'd a few gearboxes and bits and pieces missing lately, so I put on my clothes. Oh, I can do that very quick, you know. And out I went. And there was a lorry bin loaded with scrap in the track behind the old cowshed.
Now, did you see this lorry?
No, but I heard it. And I should know the sound of a lorry bin loaded. Though, mind you, they weren't making that much of a noise, as they were trying to be quiet.
I see. So what did you do?
Pushed open the cowshed door and got a glimpse of who was inside.
You saw some people inside?
Yes, mister.
And then what happened?
I got hit on the head, didn't I?
You felt a blow on the head and became unconscious?
And the two people you saw in the old cowshed that night, can you see them in court today?
Might have I had my glasses. Ern has them. Ern. That's him up there. No mistaking then.